Welcome everybody to Cumbria Wildlife Trust's third podcast, and we've got massive news. I'm joined on the podcast by our Chief Executive, Steve Trotter, who's going to tell us a little bit more about it. So, Steve, welcome for a start.
Hello, hi Joe.
Tell us a bit about what it is.
Well, it is incredibly exciting, and it's not every day you get the chance to take on a mountain. And we announced just the other day that we're hoping to purchase and acquire 3,000 acres of Skiddaw Forest. So it's a huge area of really remote, rugged terrain in the northern part of the Lake District. Many people will know Skiddaw from Keswick. We're talking about the summit of Skiddaw Man and much of the ridge that goes north and westwards from Skiddaw Summit. So we're talking about a 3,000 acre bowl that's surrounded by the ridges of the Skiddaw Range.
We run and manage a lot of nature reserves, 3,500 hectares, but this is increasing our nature reserve holding by a third. What makes it so special then? What makes it so important?
It's really about the opportunity to put the wildlife and the habitats back into a landscape where they've either been lost or degraded over the years for a whole range of reasons. So this is about a massive opportunity to really show how we can bring nature back and respect all the other values of the Lake District, which include farming and food production. It includes recreation, fell running. It includes the natural beauty of the landscape. So it's a real opportunity to take a place that, to be honest, isn't bad. It's already an SSSI and it's already got protections, but it could be so much better, and we could do so much to really improve its condition and value. So taking all those things together, it's a real opportunity, for example, for us to restore montane scrub, blending into what is now known as temperate rainforest, or this kind of classic upland oakwood, really rare habitat. We've only got fragments left, so we've got the opportunity, working with Aviva in a national partnership that the Wildlife Trust have with them, to put back around 270 hectares or so of this upland woodland, which won't be plantation. There won't be Sitka spruce. We're not putting in any new fences, and we're not going to be looking for big green tree guards and tree stakes. So that's really exciting. And then there's about 1,000 acres of peat bog, which has been drained in the past and cut for fuel. And the plan is to put that back into good condition and block up the drains and re-wet it, and start the process of rebuilding those bogs and putting the wildlife back.
And this is one of the largest areas of upland blanket bog, isn't it, within the Lake District?
Oh yeah, very much so. I think the lakes has got 30,000 hectares of bog, 90% of which is in poor condition. So to get a big chunk like this, 1,000 acres in one go, is absolutely amazing. It could have big impacts downstream as well. So Skiddaw Forest is at the head of two catchments. So the Dash Beck catchment that goes into Bassenthwaite, but also the River Colgy, which flows down into Carlisle. So if we can help hold back some of the water and slow the flow, we know we will help in reducing the scale of floods down in Carlisle and other places. So lots of angles to this.
Brilliant. And so it's huge for the Trust. It's huge in terms of combating the nature crisis.
Very much so, yeah. The plan is that we, working with our partners and colleagues in other organisations, we want to create this almost like a necklace of nature recovery sites across the northern fells. So starting in Haweswater, which is well known for the work that RSPB and United Utilities have done, through to Wild Ennerdale, where the National Trust, Forest Commission and UU have worked, and including Thirlmere and especially Skiddaw. Can we get this connected landscape scale approach to putting wildlife back into northern Cumbria? So really exciting. This is a 100-year vision. Yeah. So, we're not talking about instant change. This is going to happen over 4 or 5 generations of people.
Yeah, we're not going to see it, are we, I'm afraid?
Sadly, not.
Anyway, we sent our roving producer, Liz, to talk to our Director of Nature Recovery, David Harpley, and he was on Eycott talking a bit about the kinds of things that we're going to be doing in recreating that Atlantic rainforest, but also the work capturing the carbon and wetting up of the bogs.
Hello, David. So I've come to find out why we've made such huge efforts to buy that very big chunk of Skiddaw. But first of all, can you tell me where we are?
Yeah, so we're at Eycott Hill, and we come here because it's similar sorts of habitats, but a bit lower down.
Could you just take me down and show me what we've got here?
Yes, of course.
Bit of a cloudy day again.
Yes. another one.
These bogs don't evolve from good weather, do they?
No. So bogs will start forming at about 750 millimetres of rain a year.
Sounds a lot.
No. So the very dry coast of the Solway is about 850.
Okay.
The coast around Morecambe Bay is about 1250. In the middle of the lakes you can have 3 metres, which then gives you the ability for blanket bog to form. And so there's a whole load of blanket bog on the land we're buying at Skiddaw. And blanket bog is this globally rare habitat where the UK is basically the world headquarters for it. The bogs we're buying on Skiddaw, mostly actually on quite steep slopes, which
Okay.
is quite unusual. You know, there's a big bog in the middle of the site called Candle Sieves Mire, because sieves is a local word for rushes, and candle sieves because you can take the pithy bit in the middle of a stem of rush, sit it in a little cup of oil and then light it
Amazing.
like a candle. But quite a lot of what we're acquiring is bog on quite steep slopes. Quite a lot of it has had damage from both peat cutting and drainage in the past. And that lets the water out, which lets the air in, and the peat all starts to rot away and decay, and the specialist plants don't like it, and all those kinds of things. So we'll be working to put that right.
So what's so special about the bog? What can it do that other things do? Why are we making such huge efforts to restore it?
Oh, all sorts. So because peat is essentially made out of carbon, they are big carbon stores. You know, so you're looking at carbon that's been in the ground for thousands of years. Well, you know, some cases since the last ice age. So there's lots and lots of carbon. They also filter water really well, so you tend to get really clean water off undamaged bogs. And then, although they're poor in vascular plants generally, they're very rich in all sorts of other things, so birds and insects in particular. And so they have this sort of multifunction thing where they store carbon, they give you really clean water, and they're really good for the sort of biodiversity.
I think you told me once that there was more carbon stored in the peat bogs in Britain than in all the forests in Europe.
I think it might be France and Germany, but it's an awful
It's a
lot
lot.
of trees. Yeah. And also, one of the things about trees is that they have a limited lifespan, and the carbon then is released back into the atmosphere or recycled, so they aren't acting as a sort of permanent store, whereas bogs act as a permanent store unless you mess with them.
And this is what we're seeking to re-establish on Skiddaw.
Yeah, the peat's already there, but lots of it is probably not currently peat forming. So you know, the store is there, but it's probably still eroding away because of damage done to it in the past. And really what you want it to do is for that store to stop eroding away and become a sink. So it's actually absorbing carbon out of the atmosphere. Now bogs do that fairly slowly, but they do it forever. And that's, you know, it's the distinction between sort of using bogs to store carbon and using other ecosystems to store carbon, because bogs are taking carbon out of the air and laying it down over a timescale of thousands of years, so long as you don't come along and dig drains in them or set them on fire or, you know, a whole load of other damaging things.
So that's our way of looking after it in a way, is taking the drains out and...
Yeah, somehow we'll be getting diggers up there and blocking drains using peat dams, because that's pretty much the best and most effective method. And that, you know, if it works, and we've done it now for about 20 years, so we kind of know that it works, starts the process of the bog restoring itself, really. You know, you get the water back up roughly to the peat surface, which stops the peat being lost to the atmosphere. The sphagnum starts to recolonise the surface of the bog, and then it looks after itself beyond that. You know, the sphagnum covers the bog surface, seals it off from the atmosphere, keeps on growing, keeps on laying down new peat.
So could you show me some of the sphagnum close up?
Yeah, of course. So the first thing you notice about it is just how incredibly wet it is.
Yeah.
So it's got specialist hollow cells that it holds water inside, and then the leaves, tiny, are all pressed together, which holds water in it by capillary action, and so it holds an enormous amount of water.
Fabulous, just wringing it out now. It did. There was a cup full of water in that, wasn't there?
Yeah. There's a lot of water in it. And that then gives you slow release. And basically, if you go from bare peat to any kind of vegetation at all, you get flood defence benefits. But you get bigger flood defence benefits if you go from any vegetation to sphagnum vegetation. Because obviously water struggles to flow through other water, means that water flows off these kinds of sites very slowly. And so you don't tend to get that sort of flashiness in boggy sites as you do from bare rock or just steep slopes.
OK, David, we'll just negotiate our way out of the bog. And perhaps you could tell me a bit more about the other aspect of what's going to be happening at Skiddaw, the regeneration of the Atlantic rainforest.
Yes, so we've got quite a lot of woodland to plant. So 270 hectares, not all in one block. It's going to be, running up the streams and running into gullies and then in blotches across the hillsides kind of thing. So not a single lump, it's several pieces. That's a lot of trees. So initial calculations about 300,000.
That's a big job, David.
That's a big job. Likelihood is because it's high up, we'll get a high failure rate, so we'll need more than that. And also because of how high it is, how remote it is, how sensitive it is within the landscape, we're going to be trying to get these trees to establish without any new fencing and without doing that thing with the tree guards and the stakes. And also in fairly high exposed locations, the tree guards tend to all blow away or all blow flat. And then obviously your tree is then growing horizontally, not vertically. And so you kind of think, it's not worth trying to do conventional tree establishment methods, really.
So it's going to be quite innovative.
It is innovative, but other people have done it before. Yeah.
So this is Atlantic rainforest, David, isn't it?
Yes.
Could you tell me a bit more about that then?
Yes, so Atlantic rainforest is trees growing in the very wet Atlantic climate that we get in northwest Britain. So there's a sort of envelope in which Atlantic rainforest will grow, which extends from the far southwest, so Devon and Cornwall, up through West Wales, into the northwest of England, so North Lancashire, much of Cumbria, and then there's lots of it further. There isn't lots anywhere. There's more of it as you go further northwest in Scotland.
As you said, there's not lots anywhere. It's actually much rarer than the tropical rainforest.
It is very, very rare indeed, yes. Yeah.
So a huge achievement then if we can give it a toehold on Skiddaw.
Yes, yeah. And then above it you have this montane scrub community, which is just basically completely absent from England. There are fragments on it on cliff ledges and so on and so forth like that, but there are no decent stands of it anywhere, certainly in England.
But the Atlantic rainforest, it's not just trees, is it? It's all the things that grow on trees that we're trying to encourage too.
Yes, yeah. So because it's so wet, things grow on the trees, and that ranges from ferns and then a whole load of mosses and lichens that grow in conditions where it doesn't get very dry ever. So big, what they call foliose lichens. So foliose meaning leaf-like. And so, you get a whole suite of species that are typical of Atlantic rainforests. You get birds that are increasingly confined to Atlantic rainforest in the UK. So things like pied flycatcher in particular, redstart to a lesser extent, wood warbler, which is in serious trouble everywhere. So you get, a suite of species that are very much characteristic of wet Atlantic woodlands.
So, Dave, it's a bold landscape-sized plan, isn't it? What do you think the timescales are for seeing a change on Skiddaw?
Seeing a change, you might see a change within 10 to 20 years. You're not going to see substantial woodland for a long time. This is a 100-year vision in effect, because it's going to take a long time to establish the trees. It's going to take a long time for the trees to grow to any height, because they're going to be at high altitude in exposed locations.
And what sort of trees are we after?
All sorts. So lots of it will be birch, there'll be hazel, aspen, oak, holly, hawthorn, rowan. There'll be willow and alder down in wetter places. So lots and lots of stuff like that. Juniper high up. So lots and lots of things. So it's about 40 different species, I think, in total. So it's a lot to do.
A lot to do. And, I bet you're dying to get started.
Well, it's a fairly daunting prospect as well as being exciting. You know, it's that, I suppose what you say, it's that nice balance between excitement and fear.
Well, that was a wonderful insight, wasn't it, from Liz and David on Eycott? And I can totally understand David's trepidation there at the end in what we're about to embark on to try to bring all these habitats back to Skiddaw Forest. But we're not quite there yet. We're well on our way. The fundraising seems to be going fantastically well, but we still need extra resources, first of all, to secure the site, but then looking at management into the future.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. I mean, it's been an amazing process so far, but we have 83% of the purchase price of Skiddaw Forest, and that's been raised mostly thanks to the national partnership that the Wildlife Trust have with Aviva, the pensions and insurance company.
That's all about recreating Atlantic rainforest, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, across the whole of the UK, which is amazing. So they've contributed a large sum alongside a trust that's interested in conserving peat. So that provided £5 million of the purchase price, but we still need to raise £1.25 million, the last 17%, to finalise the purchase of the site. It sounds a lot of money, and it is, but it's because there's so
Absolutely.
much of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we've now got this challenge of raising 1.25 million. We launched an appeal, which is going amazingly well so far. I'm just completely humbled by the amazing generosity of people. And what's really powerful, it's quite emotional actually for me, is that about 5,000 people have donated, you know, ranging from pocket money sums right the way through to, you know, several £1,000s. So people really care. To me, it showed people really care about the Lake District. They really care about wildlife, and they really care about wanting to do something in this world where, you know, there's so many bad news stories and negative news stories. This clearly touched a nerve that this is something positive we can do for the environment.
I totally agree. Very nerdy like. I went through all of the comments with all of the donations on Friday night. I went through thousands of them having a look because it was so humbling and such a fantastic reaction by people who don't have anything to do with Cumbria, people who don't necessarily have anything to do with the Wildlife Trust or the Lake District, you know. And I think it's that scale, isn't it? It's that people seeing that this, because of the scale of the project, we can really, really, really make a difference.
I couldn't agree more. And as you say, we're just really grateful and thankful to everyone that's made a donation, and we're well on the way to being able to complete the acquisition, the purchase of Skiddaw Forest.
And people are going to be able to get involved in all sorts of ways, aren't they?
That's
It's not just a money ask, into the future, and we'll be launching these initiatives as we progress with the site once it's secured, but volunteering, helping grow the trees, all of these kind of things.
Collecting the seed, growing the trees, monitoring, surveys. All of these things are really critical.
Lots of ways to get involved.
You know, we want people to get involved, to go and enjoy it, appreciate it, but also get involved in some of the discussions that we have in the future about what goes on.
We're talking about the recreation of Atlantic rainforest, and Atlantic rainforest is a wonderful, wonderful habitat. Only fragments of it left across the western seaboard of the British Isles, but we do have some little bits on some of our reserves. And Liz, our roving producer, went out again to talk to Danni Chalmers. Danni looks after our nature reserves at Staveley Woodlands, and Liz and Danni went to Dorothy Farrer's Springwood, part of our Staveley Woodlands Reserve, to have a look at what an Atlantic rainforest is all about, and also the kind of things that we're doing there on a much smaller scale to link rainforest fragments together.
Hello, Danni. So we've come here to learn more about the Atlantic rainforest. So can you talk me through it?
Absolutely. So this is Dorothy Farrer's Springwood. So there is lots of little watercourses that run throughout this wood, which is what makes it so lovely and wet. That is one of the most important things, is that constant humidity level that keeps it nice and moist all year round, even when it's droughty. So it is perfect here for all these wet loving things.
It's very sunny today, a beautiful blue sky, but here it's just dappled shade, isn't it? And it's quite church-like.
Yes, you can stand in here and feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, which is lovely, because we are really quite close to some big roads and stuff here, and you can't hear it at all. You can just hear the beck and the birds, and it's lovely.
Okay, and tell me about the different sorts of trees that we're getting here.
So we've got a real mixture of trees here. The best thing for this type of woodland is to have a diverse amount of species and of age ranges. So yes, you want lots of nice big old trees, but you also want the future old trees to be coming alongside them.
So what have we got here?
So where we're stood right now, we've got lots of big ash trees, we've got some rowan, we've got lots of hazels and alder. So it's a real mixture of all sorts of different things here.
One of the aspects of Atlantic rainforest is that it's not just about trees, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's not just about trees at all. It is about everything that lives alongside and on the trees. So all of these different species here all live with each other, on each other, and have an amazing symbiotic relationship with this woodland. So there is lots of fungi here, there's lots of lichens, there's lots of ferns and mosses just absolutely growing everywhere, growing up the trees, growing over the boulders. There's a fantastic, I don't know if you can see it actually, there's a fantastic fungus just over here that's actually growing quite green and turquoise looking out underneath that tree. It's something called the turquoise elf cup. And you'll quite often come across bits of bark that are stained a funny green colour or a funny blue shade, and that's actually from this fungus that's here.
It's an astonishing colour.
It is. It's something you don't often see out in nature, that
Not
colour.
at all. It looks like you've been to a paint shop. It's very kind of vivid turquoise, isn't it? And what about the rotting wood? It's part of the resource of the wood as well, isn't it? All the things that have fallen and died.
It is, yeah. So it's really, really important in woodland management not to go and make it tidy. So a lot of people will ring us up and say, oh, there's bits of branches everywhere, it looks untidy. And we explain to them that that's really a massive part of making this different habitat kind of ecosystem work. If you were to break this open, which we're not going to because it's absolutely lovely as it is, there'll be so many different invertebrates inside there, absolutely chomping it to pieces.
And of course the invertebrates bring the birds in as well.
They do, yeah. We're really lucky here in that we've got a lovely amount of bird life. We actually can't hear very much at the moment, but we do get pied flycatchers here, which is one of our favourites. We get lots of people up here to see them. We get greater woodpeckers and green woodpeckers here. I was actually looking at a new woodpecker house that has been made in a bit of rotting wood further up, so it's really nice to know that they've been breeding quite successfully this year.
Oh really? So that's where the house that we put in?
No, so this is an old tree that has all died off, but we leave standing, so it's like standing dead wood. We've taken off any limbs that may have fallen across the path to make sure that they're safe, but we leave the trunk so that other things can use it, and it's housed in there, so it's made itself a lovely nest in there. It's a great big hole, it's made a big mess underneath. It looks like somebody's been there with a chainsaw chopping all this wood when actually it's just a woodpecker.
Is that a green woodpecker?
Yes, yeah.
I love them. I love the sound of them.
I know, you can hear them yaffling a while away, can't you?
You're going to take me now to a spot where we're actually extending the woodland.
Yes, we're going to go and have a look at the future woodland. So what we hope to achieve is a corridor that links up woodlands rather than having woodlands as islands dotted around everywhere.
And linking up reserves and woodlands is so important for wildlife.
Yeah, it really is. It's really important for all sorts of things, not just like I was saying before about having that different age range available for species to move on to, but for lots of mammals, they need that corridor to make sure that they can get places safely, and to make sure that they've got invertebrates and things to eat on the way. It just increases habitat for everything. So it's just lovely to point out above us at the moment on this ash tree, there is a whole branch that's just laden with ferns, polypody ferns that are growing along it and loving that really dense soil that's grown for the last few hundred years up there on that branch.
You'd be proud of that in a garden, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're just crossing the beck now.
Yeah, so the becks here are really, really important to keep this woodland nice and moist. It's called Dorothy Farrer's Springwood, and these little springs are dotted around throughout the woodland. This one is a little bit more substantial, as you can hear. It's just an absolutely lovely feature here, and we do have some amazing bryophytes that grow alongside this river.
Can you explain what a bryophyte is?
The types of mosses and liverwort that are here.
It's just all sorts of wonderful shades of green, isn't it?
It is.
And it's so lush.
It's very, very lush, and I think from stood here it all just looks like one, but the closer you get to it you realise there's loads of different leaf structures all amongst these big huge mosses that are there. It's really nice. Okay, so we've come out of the woodland and
you can probably tell we've come up a hill. and the view has just completely opened out. Tell me where we are, Danni.
We are currently stood on a bit of land that got gifted to us that is in between Dorothy Farrers, where we were before, and Craggy Wood, which is just behind where we're stood now. And this bit of land is getting planted up so that it can link up the two together.
It's a fantastic valley.
Oh, it's a wonderful, wonderful view from here. So to our right, we're looking kind of towards the Kentmere valleys. And then we've got to the left, just the bottom end of Kendal, we're just beyond that hill there. And this is all of Staveley in front of us and kind of over to Crook as well, which is quite nice.
And it's really lovely because it is a very mixed valley, isn't it? There are a lot of trees.
There is, yeah, but what's really, really apparent from here is how singular these clumps of woodlands are that are dotted out in front of us. There is nothing connecting these woodlands up at all, which is why we're here.
That would be your ambition, to connect the whole lot?
Yes, absolutely. Even if it was just with hedgerows, getting them all connected would be fantastic.
So tell me a bit more about this planting that we're standing amongst now.
So this has been an absolute labour of love, not just for me, but for the entire community. So we've had trees growing here now that have come from all over. People have been growing them at home and all sorts of things during lockdown. It's been absolutely wonderful. So initially we seed collected from both of these woodlands, so from Dorothy Farrers and from Craggy, to make sure that the seed that we used was as local as possible and we weren't bringing in any tree disease. We then managed to get gifted a little plot of land by the parish council to grow the trees in like a micro tree nursery. So during lockdown they were lovingly cared for by people on their 1 hour a day outside, and a lot of people took some home to look after in their back gardens as well. And now they're all in front of us, so they've all been planted out here.
They look like they're doing pretty well.
They are, yeah, they're really doing remarkably well. So these guys got actually planted 2 years ago now, and they've had 2 really harsh springs, and then this year they've actually had a real good go at growing above these tree tubes, so it's been great. But for the past 2 springs it's been really hard to keep them watered because we're up on top of quite a big hill that's hard work to carry water up. So we've had to really rely on people with dogs on their dog walks and all sorts of things coming through and watering them. We've been leaving watering cans and bowsers at each side so people could water them on their routes. So it's been really, really nice to see them now really thriving. It's wonderful.
You talked about seed collecting. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the seed collecting was really quite hard because you've got to make sure that not only are you taking the right kind of seed, but that you're making sure there's enough out there still for the wildlife that needs it as well. So that's the birds and also the mammals. We have to make sure that they've still got plenty of resources too. And a lot of these seeds have got to go through a big stratification process where they've got to go through kind of a real frost and then a real warm awakening. So that means lots of us have had to keep seed in our freezers and then our airing cupboards to make sure they still go through that same process.
Absolutely wonderful. And what sort of trees have we got here?
It's going to mainly be an oak hazel woodland, but we have got all sorts in here. We've got small leaved limes, we've got rowan, we've got bird cherry, we've got lots of things like hawthorns and blackthorns, so a bit of a scrubby layer as well. So when they all start to grow, we're going to have a real mix of different heights of things because we don't just want a big woodland where it's all the same species all over. We want that diversity in here. So we're trying to plant a little bit of everything.
Very nice that it's not regimented in any way.
Yes, no, we try to encourage people not to be regimented when they were planting, which is really, really hard because your kind of natural instinct is to plant in rows and to plant similar species with each other as well. So we were trying to encourage people to get real big handfuls of all sorts of different things and then like write their names in planting and all sorts, so that it really did look a mismatch of all sorts of things eventually anyway.
So Danni, when will it become a wood? It's just now it's a field with a load of saplings in it.
So it's going to be about 15 years before it really looks like it's starting to be a proper woodland. By that point, and some of these faster growing species will start towering above us, and a lot of the slower growing ones will really have kicked off by then as well. So oaks, they like to put a bit of a growth spurt in early on and then they'll start to slow down again. So I think in 15 years time we're really going to see this as a nice woodland corridor at least, yeah.
I guess this is what we're going to get at Skiddaw, lots of saplings taking a long time to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So these trees here are obviously a lot lower down than Skiddaw, and They do grow on a hillside here, but nowhere near to the same extreme. So these will be a lot higher, and the ones will be a little bit dwarfier that are up at Skiddaw and have to face a lot more elements. So they'll need a lot of helping hand to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of tender care.
Yeah.
What a fantastic description, painting us a picture of what it's actually like being in an Atlantic rainforest from Danni there. So like I said before, listeners, you can all get involved. Obviously, we still need money and we're still asking for donations to help us to secure Skiddaw Forest. And there are all sorts of other opportunities and other ways that people will be able to get involved. If you keep an eye on the website and on our newsletters, sign up for our newsletters. That's all at cumbriawildlifetrust.org.uk. And there will be opportunities to help with seed collecting and with tree planting. We're hoping to get together 2 community tree nurseries, so we'll be able to grow a lot of the trees ourselves. And Steve, each of these contributions that everybody's made, no matter how small, is massively significant, isn't it, in making such a difference?
It really is. I know people say this a lot, but we genuinely couldn't do this without these contributions, and every donation is a vital part of the jigsaw that we're putting together, really. And it's going to be going 100% to the cause that people are giving to.
Excellent.
You know, it'd be fantastic to hear from people if they've got any personal stories or anecdotes about Skiddaw Forest. Perhaps they've had an adventure there in the past, or perhaps they know people that have worked there or lived there. I had a fantastic one the other day. There's a chap called Dr. Angus Lunn, who's a well-known northern naturalist and geologist, and there are some curious stripes on the bit of ground between Skiddaw Man and Little Skiddaw. There's one body of scientists who think these are stripes caused by the freezing and thawing of ground, particularly at the end of the last ice age. But recently, some new evidence has come to light. Somebody remembers that during the war, the army went up there and they had to run up and down in vertical lines, including with vehicles. And so the alternative explanation is that these straight lines on the ground are actually because of former squaddies training and running up and down the fell side and creating these lines and tracks in the ground. So who knows who's right? And it's a fascinating insight into alternative theories about how some of our landforms form.
Absolutely. No, you're right. I mean, it would be brilliant to get people's insight into, if you've ever stayed at Skiddaw House, tell us about your experience there. And especially if these experiences going back a long way, because we're really interested to know about the previous history of the site, aren't we? And
yeah, definitely. And Skiddaw House, we haven't mentioned, but the acquisition doesn't include Skiddaw House. The house is run and managed by an independent youth hostel trust who do an absolutely brilliant job of providing absolutely fabulous accommodation for walkers, because Skiddaw's always got a long walk in, so it might take you 2-3 hours to get there. And people love to stay there because it's so peaceful, so quiet, so remote.
Absolutely, yeah. I stayed there in January with some friends of mine, and it was so cold. It was quite incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was cozy by the fire. And also, if anybody's got any comments or feedback about the podcasts, things they'd like to hear, then if you could drop us a line to mail@cumbriawildlifetrust.org.uk, and we'll take that feedback on board. And I think, Steve, we'll draw things to a close there. Thanks very much for giving us
Joe.
Brilliant insight into this wonderful project that we've got. Lots of work into the
lots of work involved. Yeah, so all the work starts soon.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Steve.